All right. And then I go, well, good morning, everyone. Um, Welcome to Unity Clear Lake Center in Lower Lake. Okay, and now we're making sure that everyone is muted during the service, and then we will go ahead. So, our speaker today is Dr. Will Tuttle. And it's always an honor to have Will with us. And he is going to start our service with a musical meditation. And so, Will, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Barbara, and thanks everyone for joining us. As you said, let's go ahead and start with a meditation. I'm sitting here in the living room of our home in Northern California at the piano, so we'll be able to have a short meditation together. So I'd like to just invite everyone to, let's now go ahead and turn our attention within. And give thanks that we are able to gather this beautiful Sunday morning in the presence of the infinite spirit of truth and love. We give thanks for all of the blessings in our life, and we give thanks knowing that we have this day and every day unique opportunities to awaken to the truth that we are and to contribute to the healing of our world and to celebrate our lives on this beautiful earth. So with every exhalation, we allow ourselves to relax and let go of any thoughts of the past or the future, to enter more deeply into the heart of our true nature, into the heart of this moment, into this here and now. The only holy moment is right now. Breathing together, and we give thanks for all of the teachings of wisdom from all the world's spiritual traditions, helping to awaken our consciousness to the truth that what we are was never born and will never die. That what we are is infinite and eternal consciousness. That one life lives through all of us, and so we just allow our hearts now to open with a feeling of loving kindness and compassion for all living beings, for the whole human family, and for all the animals, celebrating their lives on this earth, in the waters and in the air and on the land. For the whole symphony of life here, with every exhalation radiating loving kindness and benevolence and goodwill, compassion and respect for all expressions of life. knowing that we are all related, interconnected. May all beings be happy and free and at peace. May we realize the original brightness of our own minds and hearts. And may we continue together to build a more enlightened society, a world that cares for everyone, a world that reflects the inner Christ, the truth of infinite eternal life. Through the power and presence of the infinite spirit of truth and love indwelling, we give thanks knowing this is so. And so it is.
Oh, thank you, Will. Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. I think one thing I really enjoy about the recording that Patricia is doing is, yay, I get to hear it all again. And I will. So I just have a few brief announcements to give. And just to remind you that the newsletter, this will be on your newsletter just coming out on the August 1st. So the church is open 3 Sundays, the 1st and 3rd with Patricia Holler at church. And then on the 5th Sunday, we have Sarah Merlin giving the service then. Our Zoom services for August, on August 9th, Reverend Margie Brock, and on August 23rd, Reverend Margaret Flick. So it's a wonderful schedule for August, and you'll be getting that on your Zoom service. So now I would like to read to you the invocation affirmation. Think about what I'm saying, because this is who we are. First, there is only one presence and one power active in your life, God, the good, omnipotent. And then there is only one presence and one power active in Unity Clear Lake Center, God, the good, omnipotent. And finally, there is only one presence and one power active in our world, God, the good, omnipotent. And the 5 basic ideas of unity, the foundation of unity. First, God is absolute good, everywhere present. Human beings have a spark of divine spirit within them, the Christ consciousness within. Therefore, they are inherently good. And 3, human beings create their experience by the activity of their thinking. Thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. Prayer is the process that affirms our connection with God mind and brings forth wisdom, healing, and everything good. And finally, knowing and understanding universal laws, also called truth, are not enough. A person must also live the truth that he or she knows. And so, as we continue, I am going to read to you the daily word for today. On Sunday, July 26th, it is, I find peace and freedom as I forgive. Forgiveness is not always easy. I may resist letting go of the hurt or distress caused by someone's words or actions. Even so, I know that forgiveness makes space for peace to flow to and through me. I release what has been, realizing the past cannot be changed. And as I do my inner work to forgive, I also forgive myself for hanging on to the of forgiveness. I open to love. Love flows to me. I heal, letting go. My heart feels lighter and I feel ready to move forward. My spiritual nature of divine love and peace cannot be harmed by words or actions. I forgive and I feel light and free. Peace and freedom will come, and Will's talk today is about spiritual healing. What it is it and how does it work? Okay, Will, thank you.
Thank you so much, Barbara, and sharing the daily word and the five principles of unity. So, I'd like to talk today about what spiritual healing is because I think there's a lot of power in these ideas, and there's a lot of confusion, I think, about the whole idea of healing. And so I think maybe before I do that, I'll just play a short piece of music just to lead into it. And this is a piece that is called The Joy of Sky. And basically, the idea is that what we are, our true nature, is like the sky. We have a feeling of being, and a kind of an experience going through our life of being a thing, an object that was born and will die. We're this being with a name and a form and memories, likes and dislikes, opinions, a whole history. And we're in time, and our time began on our birthday, and it's going to end when we leave our body. And so that's kind of what we're told by our society, that we're this thing. But spiritual healing, and I think the truth also, not only in unity, but of all the world religions, is that this is an illusion. What we are is far more eternal and infinite and vast than an object. So this piece is called The Joy of Sky, and it's, I think, evokes perhaps the understanding that when we realize our true nature, there's this bubbling spring of joy within us that begins to get activated. We begin to connect with that. It's not anything to be proud of, but it's just something that we begin to feel actually within us. So here we go. This is Joy of Sky. Thank you. So I'd like to go ahead and say a little bit more about what I was referring to before the piece, The Joy of Sky, which is an original piece of music. And I think perhaps it conveys a little bit the sense through music. We have these 12 tones that people think there's 7 tones to the scale, but there's actually 12 in Western music. And those 12 tones give us such a broad potential, an infinite potential of rhythms and melodies and harmonies. And through that, perhaps we can get a feeling, which is, I think, really what music has done for thousands of years, a feeling of something beyond merely the material level to the spiritual level. And so the underlying idea is that we are conditioned by our society to see ourselves as objects, like I said earlier. And it's really through the inner work that you talked about, Barbara, in the reading, the inner work of working with our mind, our consciousness, so that we can quiet our mind. And it's really, I think, essential that we have a practice where we do this on a daily basis and learn to become a witness to the thoughts and feelings as they're arising, instead of being carried along by them and being in a way at the mercy of our thoughts and feelings. So like someone says something, like you said, Barbara, in the daily word reading, and we get angry, we're offended, and they said something that hurt me and was not very nice or whatever. And so we're at the mercy of whatever other people do, right? And we don't know what they're going to do. So then we're a slave, in a sense. We're a prisoner to the outer world. And the whole idea, I think, in spiritual practice is to do the inner work so that we realize that what we are is consciousness. And consciousness is like the sky. It's infinite, eternal, and undamageable by the clouds that are passing by whatever the conditioned world brings us. And we will know this, I think, when we leave this body. We'll have a more direct experience of this. But while we're still in the body, the whole challenge is to awaken spiritually while we're still in the body. And there's an old saying in the Zen tradition that the practice is that if we die before we die, then when we die we won't die, right? So the idea is that when we die to the delusion of being a fundamentally separate self, when we let that go and we actually directly experience and understand, not just intellectually but at a deeper level, that we are eternal consciousness, then when we die, when we leave our physical body, we won't die, because we'll know that it'll be actually obvious that we are consciousness that uses the physical body like a vehicle, and we're not that body. So the big mistake that we're making in our society in general, I think, it's not our fault, but it's just what is being told us all the time from our senses and also from our conditioning, is that we are this body. We think we are this thing. And so when we have that thought and that conviction and that belief, then our body gives us problems. We have aches and pains. We have suffering because we're identified with the body. And so the whole idea with spiritual healing is something that turns that completely around, and we realize that we are not this body. We're not a corporeal entity. We're not a physical thing. And that is not easy. It's something that's almost, it's kind of visceral, this feeling of being a person, a thing with a body, with drives and appetites and desires and aversions, fears, all these things that kind of grab us. And of course, what the great sages and saints and mystics and poets from the thousands of years have said is that when we do the inner work and quiet our mind, then we can come into a far greater harmony. We can begin to touch on the universal life, the life that is, I guess you could say, divine, in the sense that it is not of this world. This world arises out of that. But this world, in many ways, is a dream. It's an illusory arising. And we think that our happiness comes from things going our way in this world, things that happening that we like, and nothing happening that we don't like, and that this is, as we get more spiritual, this is how things go. And it's not necessarily true. As we get more spiritual, we may find more challenges, actually. I remember when I lived in the I lived in a Tibetan Buddhist center in San Francisco called Kagyu Drodin Kunchab, which was a Kagyu lineage tradition. And there's four lineages in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. And the Kagyu of the four is called the practice lineage. They're the yogis that go up into the mountains and just meditate a lot. And so it's also called the besides the practice lineage, it's also called the mishap lineage. Because the idea is that they're practicing so much and putting so much energy and effort into the inner work and meditating for hours and hours every day that they're ripening the karma from many lives quickly. So they'll go through just in one life the karma of maybe 100 lifetimes. So they have all these things happening, difficulties and challenges and problems arising, and instead of thinking, oh, this is too bad, why is this happening to me again, the idea is we celebrate. Oh, this is great. I'm getting to work through lots of past karma, because the idea really with karma, it's a fundamental universal spiritual teaching within the Christian tradition, obviously as well. Paul says in Corinthians, God is not mocked. Whatever you sow, so shall you reap. And this basic idea of sowing as we reap is a universal teaching. And so we just have to realize we have more than just this one life, obviously. And so this understanding of eternal life, that we are the being that manifests through a vehicle, then the idea is to learn to drive our vehicle skillfully, right? Not to keep hitting the same pothole over and over again. We learn from our lessons, and then we move in a different way, and we don't keep creating. Like we put our hand on a hot burner, we realize, ouch, okay, I'm not going to keep putting my hand on that hot burner. And it's the same thing. We learn not to say things to people that are hurtful. Even though it may not hurt us, we gradually realize that as we sow, we reap. And we also, through meditation, realize that the other living beings in our world are actually aspects of ourself, that there's one life living through all of us, and if I harm others, I'm harming myself. And we get a feeling for this. That's why we stop eating animals, we stop harming other people, we stop exploiting animals and other human beings or using them. It comes out of this understanding that there's one life living through us all. That's the underlying spiritual truth. And so what we are told in our society in terms of healing is that we're being invaded and attacked by germs and bacteria and viruses and pathogens and parasites and who knows what, all these forces outside of us, and that we need to basically fight this battle against all these malevolent forces. And I think that underlying idea gives us a very puts us in a difficult situation, because we're in a battle all the time to try to stay healthy, and we could lose. And then, of course, we have this gigantic industry, the pharmaceutical medical complex, which is right there with all kinds of medications and procedures and diagnoses and everything else, that they make lots of money through this whole thing. And we end up more and more being at the mercy of this gigantic system. So the idea is, instead of that, is to realize that whatever arises in our physical body is a manifestation of consciousness. And when we change our consciousness and bring our vibratory level to a higher level, then so-called dis-ease can evaporate into ease. This is something that we can all learn to do. And one of the things that we see actually in all the world's spiritual traditions, especially, of course, in Christianity, is healing, spiritual healing. And Jesus was very explicit about this. He said, whatever I do, you can do also. And greater things than I do, you can do. So, and he healed lots of people, right? I mean, in the Gospels, you see him even raising people from the dead and healing people who are lame, healing people who are blind, raising people up who can't walk, all these things happening. And we see this happening in the Christian tradition in churches. I remember really when I was with my younger brother Ed, and we were on a walk across the country with no money, meditating, and we were just walking down through New York, Pennsylvania, and then down into West Virginia and into eastern Kentucky. And they said, "Boys, you're in the Bible Belt now." But I remember I didn't know what that meant. But we ended up, as we walked through these little towns in West Virginia and eastern Kentucky, we would come upon because we had no money, so we were staying in the churches. We would sleep on the floor of the church every night somewhere in some little town as we worked our way south. And I remember going to some revivals where the minister would start speaking very loudly and then go into kind of a trance, and all of the and other people would start uh, uh, gyrating and vibrating, and then people who had diseases would be healed. I mean, it was really happening. People who had things where they couldn't walk, their leg didn't work, or whatever it was, they would start dancing around and saying, "Hallelujah! I can dance again. I can move again." And there was just this idea that the Holy Spirit can come upon us and bring healing. And I think that what they were doing is in that direction. I think it's probably more emotional. There's this sort of a tremendous emotional energy that gets built up through singing and moving. We'd be marching around the church, really. It was like around and around and around and singing, and it got to very intense. And then but you could see that there was a tremendous loving presence in the room that would come in. But I think what there is at another level beyond that is deeper understanding that what we are is a manifestation of eternal spirit, and that can come to us in total silence and quietness. And if we study, for example, the unity teachings and also the teachings of Christian Science, which is in many ways foundational to the whole New Thought movement, the idea is that when we enter into prayer or into meditation, which, remember what prayer is. Jesus said to go into the closet and shut the door. That basically is the teaching on how to pray. So what it means is we go into the closet of our own consciousness and we shut the door to any thoughts of the outer world, of the past or the future, of what we're going to do, and we just dwell in a sense of union or communion with the transpersonal dimension of consciousness, with what is beyond this personality, this mask that we're wearing through our life. Connect with the being that is our true nature, that is the source of all life. What we say in unity, the omnipotence, omnipresence, and omniscience of the one mind. And as we are in that awareness, the physical body comes into harmony. And we will find, and I've seen this has happened to me and many people, we will find things that were out of harmony coming into harmony. Things that were even sort of miraculous healings happen. And it's not a big deal, actually. It's just the nature of the way things are. We're all born and raised in a culture of materialism, which basically doesn't have a place for this kind of understanding. Materialism takes the material world to be real, actually real, and fails to recognize that it is a manifestation of consciousness, of energy and consciousness is primary. Consciousness does not emerge out of matter like we're taught. The big lie in school is that there was this big bang, like there was nothing here, right? Then there was a big bang, like that. It's just comical. I mean, like the scientists say, give us one miracle, we'll take it from there, you know. But and then everything's um, just random, meaningless, purposelessness, with gases and molecules banging up against each other and sort of creating what we see around us, the beauty and harmony of all these different forms of life. I mean, it's a philosophy for slaves. We have to really completely reject this delusion of materialism, and that somehow out of matter consciousness appeared. I mean, it's very damaging, that idea. So to understand that consciousness is primary and matter emerges out of consciousness, it's really true. I mean, when you probably have had this experience, but I know when I'm in a dream at night, I see and feel it's real. It's as real as this. And then when I wake up, it's like, oh, that was just a dream. So it's the same exact thing. We are in a world that seems real, and it is real. It has a certain reality, but it is not the ultimate reality. The ultimate reality is consciousness, and that's what we are. And so we transcend all the boundaries of space and time and limitations. And so if we can come in just for a moment into that awareness, then what seems to be miraculous healings can certainly happen. And this is the foundation. I mean, if you just read, for example, in the Christian Science Journal, every month there's all kinds of examples of this, and in many of the Unity publications also. The Unity has the prayer tower that's always on, and in the Buddhist tradition, we have many examples of these kinds of healings happening. So the idea is that this is the important point, though, we're not trying to get a healing. A lot of times we think, well, life would be so great if I could just have a healing. And that's a trap also, because then we're trying to get something. So we're at this point of wanting something. And the word want means lack, really. So I'm lacking health, so I want to get health. I'm lacking peace, I want to get peace. I'm lacking abundance, I want to get abundance. The idea is we are health, we are abundance, we are radiant life. Because what we are is not this physical object, we are the eternal life. So the only way to get there, though, is not by reading. Reading helps. We can read these ideas, you can listen to me, or whatever, we can listen to talks, and that's helpful. It points in the direction. But the real, actual work is in consciousness, and it's in silence. That's the irony, is when we stop trying to make it happen and can be. And it really, I have to say, it takes practice. But the beautiful thing is that every time we practice, every time we make an effort in this direction, we can make progress. We can have insights, and we can begin to realize that it is possible to heal anything in the physical body. There's two kinds of healing that happen in so-called spiritual healing. One is more of a mental healing, which is when we're affirming and praying and working toward a healing. And it can work. I mean, we can have a healing that way. It's through visualizations and so forth, affirmations and denials. The thing is, those kinds of healings usually are not deeply rooted. They're helpful, but it's when we can just let go of all of the trying and just be one with the infinite spirit and get out of the way completely, when the deep healings happen. And again, this is something that is very difficult to talk about, but we can get a sense of it. I've told stories. I've had a few experiences of of getting more of the mental healing. I think where like when I at one point, I'll just give one little example. Um, I was doing a meditation retreat and I got a pain in my back, and I realized through well, I heard a voice the next morning that said a pain in the body is a pain in the mind. And so I started working with that idea, and I realized that this pain in my back was actually a manifestation of a pain that I had had when I was a little child, and that I had repressed it. It was the pain of not wanting to reach out into the world, of being rejected or criticized. And so now I could work with that pain and realize that the pain of that little boy, that how real it was for him, it's gone. I don't have to be under the influence of that anymore. This is, 15 years later or 20 years later, I'm free of that. And I understood that at a deep level through this meditation retreat. And as soon as I got it in my mind, the pain disappeared. It just was gone. And it really lasted. It was it was one of those things. So I think that the problem is in our society we're taught if we have a pain like that, then I better go get a medication, I better get some pain pills, I better go, maybe I should get some surgery done, whatever it is. So then we end up treating the symptom, but we don't get to the cause. So the idea is the cause is something deeper. Usually any physical problem has a mental cause. And very often we can go two ways. One is we can try to figure out what the mental cause is, what the pain is from childhood usually, or from somewhere in the past that we haven't dealt with. It's still there, so we work with it. And if we get an insight into it and we release it, we can have a somewhat cathartic experience perhaps. We go, aha, now I understand. And then it can be released and we have a healing. That's one path. The other path is don't even worry about what it was in the past. Just right now understand the perfection of being that is the true nature. That does it. That's it. If we can have that awareness, quiet the mind completely and be present. And again, it sounds so easy, but of course the mind is very busy. It's always churning up thoughts and feelings and ideas and likes and dislikes. And so it's the churning of the water that makes these things so difficult. But as we practice, that's why a daily practice is so important. As we practice on a daily basis, we get to know ourselves and get to know our mind. And then our mind, instead of being an enemy, like this, in the Zen tradition, they have this idea of an ox, this wild ox that's pulling me here and pulling me there. After a while, there's the 10 ox herding pictures in the Zen tradition where you gradually get to make friends with the ox, and then you can ride the ox, and then so we're riding our mind instead of the mind riding on us. That's basically the idea, and so then healings begin to emerge, or sometimes it's not meant to happen. Also, sometimes a healing, where maybe we're taking on the pain of the world on some level, and we just carry it. And there's lots of beautiful teachings from other traditions. Yeah, of great spiritual masters who carried disease. They carried it. And there's one story of the great yogi Milarepa, who in Tibet, he had such a deep practice that he could really, in many ways, transform his body into different things. He could fly through the air, all these different things. And at one point, toward the end of his life, he got some kind of an illness or some kind of pain in his body that was really excruciating. And his disciples said, is it really painful? And he said, yes, yeah, it's very painful. And but then some other yogis came over that were kind of wanted to challenge him. And one of the yogis said, well, I don't think it doesn't look like you're suffering that much. It probably isn't that bad, really. And he said, it's a big pain, actually, but I just wear it like I would wear my a little shirt. You know, it's not a big problem for me, but it's a big pain actually. And so the yogi said, well, it doesn't look like it could be that bad. And then Milarepa said, all right, I'll just take this pain and I'll put it into that tree over there. And so then he projected the pain in his body over to this tree, and the tree started shaking, and all the bark flew off. and so, and then he took the pain back into his body again. And the yogi was kind of like, "Whoa, that's pretty amazing." But I think you just did a trick. I don't think you really did anything. That was just a trick. And he said, "Well, I'll go ahead and transfer it to you, and you can see what it's like yourself." And he said, "All right, go ahead. I don't mind." And so then Milarepa transferred it to this guy, and of course the guy starts screaming and rolling around on the ground, and and so Milarepa takes it back on himself and smiles and says, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And the guy says, "Wow, it really was intense." So the basic idea, though, again, is that physical suffering and suffering in general are a product of our consciousness, a product of the mind, ultimately. And if we are at a high enough level in awareness, it doesn't have to cause us so much anxiety and suffering and pain. A lot of it is the resistance that we feel. I've experienced this somewhat myself. I'm sure we all have. If I'm resisting something, it hurts a lot more. I mean, when I was sometimes meditating in these meditation retreats where you're not allowed to move, hour after hour after hour, my legs would be so sore. They'd be screaming, and I learned to kind of just watch the pain, just watch it, just be aware of it, and there's a sense that it's there, but it's not me. And I think that's the underlying idea. We can realize that what we are is the being. We're not the object. And that gives us a certain freedom. The material world that we're raised in is profoundly threatened by these kinds of ideas, and on many levels. I mean, from a marketing point of view and from just in general, we have invested so much money into technologies that keep us separate from nature and separate from these capacities that we naturally have. And so it's very threatening to the established order to even entertain these kinds of ideas. But on the other hand, they keep cropping up everywhere. And there's an understanding that's growing, I think, in humanity that we as human beings have tremendous healing capacities, that spiritual healing is possible for all of us, for virtually anything. A lot of the problems that we're having physically are the result either of one or two things. One is mental anxiety and things that we have not yet solved on some level. And number two, poisons that come into the body. We're poisoned all the time by physical toxins in the food and the water and the air and so forth. And so both of these things can be dealt with our mind, actually. And so if we're taking in mental toxins, and there's a lot of mental toxins, a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, a lot of anger, so forth in the world, and division and distrust and conflict and so forth. And we can be on edge. We can not have enough money. We can not have enough affection, not have enough attention, not have enough time. All these, or too much of different things. And so we're struggling. A lot of us are struggling, and so that creates pain in the body. And then there's poisons that physical poisons that come in, like glyphosate and paraquat and diquat and all these toxic chemicals and pesticides. So our mind can resolve these. We can cleanse toxins. We can cleanse mental toxins, and we can cleanse physical toxins. Very often, to cleanse the physical toxins, we'll cooperate with the body. We'll drink really, plenty of water. We'll maybe not eat any food for a while if we need to, for a few days or even longer, perhaps do some fasting. But our body has a tremendous intelligence, and it's the intelligence of our consciousness, of the infinite consciousness, and it's always cleansing. It's always doing what it can to cleanse these toxins. And we can cleanse the mental toxins that come in as well. And as we do that, we establish ourselves and reestablish ourselves in the present moment of radiant health. And that's something that's really, I think, up to each one of us. It's our responsibility as individual manifestations of consciousness to do the best we can every moment to be in that harmony. And so a lot of it is learning to take in healthy foods, healthy water, healthy beverages, healthy reading, healthy input, healthy conversations, and so forth, to connect with the truth more and more fully. And if we're going to insist on taking in poisons of suffering, eating suffering of animals, for example, or eating poisons, or taking in very negative input from reading and so forth, anger and fear, then that's a choice that we're making. It's a vibratory level that we're actually feeding. And so it's just not wise. It's like putting our hand on a hot burner. It's gonna burn if we're at that level. So we learn with time. I think that's really what the earth is. It's a learning realm where we learn to stop putting your hand on the hot burner and don't take those things in, right? And then also don't put out toxins into the world. The same thing. The more we can radiate joy and kindness and benevolence and goodwill, creativity and abundance to others, the more we find them growing in our life. And it's a beautiful opportunity we have for the short time we're on this earth to put these things into practice. Time flies so quickly, and suddenly we're at the end of our lifetime. And did we really learn? Did we really heal? Did we really understand the truth of spiritual healing? It's one of the most important teachings, I think, really. The idea that we're not a material object, that we can heal literally anything through understanding and consciousness, that our every cell is imbued with consciousness, with the consciousness of our true nature, and that as we deepen our understanding of this, we can fulfill our purpose at a deeper level. And not only that, we can begin to be a healing force in the world for others by our example and by the way we live our lives. So I think, how are we doing on time, Barbara? I think I should maybe wrap it up here in a few minutes. But basically, this is the deeper teaching, I think, within the unity movement that underlies the good news, essentially, the really good news that Jesus brought, the gospel, that divine love is the only power. It's available to us all the time to heal any type of problem we have, whether it's relationship or in our affairs or in our physical body or in the world itself. And that the actual world that we see is not the real world. That's an important thing to understand. It's a product of our conditioning, and that when our eyes see clearly, there is peace on earth. There is peace beyond in the essence of all being. That's the true nature. But we'll never see that until we purify our consciousness. So that's the assignment, in a sense, I think, for us as spiritual beings on this earth, is to clear away all the delusion that blocks our vision of the true nature of reality. People say, we wish there was peace on earth. And actually there is peace on earth if we can see beyond the outer world to the source of what is activating and making this whole thing possible. And get beyond time. Time is the great illusion. In the fullness of time, in the fullness of the ripening of consciousness, we are all enlightened. All beings are enlightened. All beings are at peace. There's one life living through all of us. We're all waves on the same ocean. In the fullness of time, there's just the ocean happening. We think we're the separate little wave running along here. and we look over and we see all the other waves, and we wave to each other. But it's just the ocean. And the ocean is at peace. Even if it's making a lot of waves, fundamentally it's at peace. It's just our sense of separateness that makes an appearance of disturbance and suffering, and we have to heal all of that. Heal comes from the old word that means whole. There's one life, a wholeness. And of course, we have a whole system based on animal agriculture and domination of the weak by the strong, and profits for a few at the expense of many, and a patient cured is a patient lost. So you don't ever want to have that happen. So we continue to feed a system based on reductionism, reducing everything to matter, separating everything, dividing and conquering, and splitting and dividing. And so the spiritual path is always the path of healing, of seeing the oneness within everything, the unity of all life, and dwelling within that awareness. So I'd like to close with a short piece of music. I think this would be nice. And we're again at the piano, and we have this this note. Maybe I'll close with this B flat piece. I think that's kind of nice. You know, the old story is I write about this in the book I wrote called The World Peace Way, and it's also in one of the other books I wrote, Your Inner Islands, The Keys to Intuitive Living, that if someone comes to the piano to play a concert and only plays one note, the B flat note, how limiting that would be, only one note. And that's like our life. You know, if we only stick to a small dimension of ourselves, we just see the material dimension, and we don't realize that there's far more than we're aware of. And it's the same thing with this keyboard. There's 88 keys here, not just one. And so when we see that, and we also see that each one of us perhaps is a note in a grand orchestral piece, and we all depend on each other to create beautiful music together. Each one of us contributes our unique piece. We each have a unique purpose and a unique expression of the divine. And just like that, every note has its own unique vibration, and it's beautiful. We're all beautiful. We all have our unique beauty. So the beauty of the B flat note. So this is just the B flat note, and then we'll just open it up to some more possibilities. Great. Thank you, everyone. Bless you. Thank you so much.
Okay, now we can unmute. Now.